For 6 years, Sophie Lombardi and I built what everyone called the perfect marriage. We were so in sync, so supportive of each other's dreams, that she started planning our future with genuine excitement. She talked about renovating our house in Maplewood, starting a family, maybe even launching that interior design business she'd always wanted. The whole neighborhood saw us as the couple that had it all figured out. But the moment my brother Louis Romano sold his tech startup for $47 million and moved back to our hometown of Brookhaven, everything changed overnight. Sophie suddenly became his biggest cheerleader, attending his networking events, introducing him to her wealthy clients, even helping him scout properties for his new venture capital firm. All our friends were whispering, waiting to see me crumble as my wife fell for my suddenly successful brother. But here's the thing that shocked everyone. I felt completely relieved, because I knew something Sophie didn't, something that would destroy Louis's empire the moment I revealed it. The question wasn't whether my marriage was over. The question was, how long before everyone discovered who really built his success? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The day Louis Romano returned to Brookhaven as a multimillionaire. Sophie was supposed to be helping me prepare for our anniversary dinner. Instead, I found her in our bedroom, trying on 3 different dresses, each more elegant than the last. "Which one says successful entrepreneur's wife without being too obvious?" she asked, holding up a navy blue cocktail dress that still had the price tag attached, $400, from a boutique she'd never shopped at before. I stared at her reflection in our bedroom mirror, watching her practice different smiles. "Since when do you care about looking like an entrepreneur's wife?" She froze, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "I just want to make a good impression tonight. Louis has been away for so long, and now he's this huge success story. The whole town's talking about his tech company sale." That's when it hit me. Sophie wasn't getting dressed up for our anniversary dinner at Rosewood Bistro, the same cozy place where we'd celebrated every year since we got married. She was getting dressed up for Louis. "You're going to his welcome home party," I said. It wasn't a question. She turned around, her face flushed with guilt and something else, excitement. "Liam, you know how important networking is for my design business? Half the real estate developers in the county will be there tonight." I sat down on our bed, watching her fidget with her wedding ring. "What about our dinner reservation?" "I can reschedule," she said quickly. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Louis specifically asked me to be there. He said he might need an interior designer for his new office complex." The irony wasn't lost on me. Sophie had been trying to land a major commercial project for 2 years. She'd submitted proposals, attended networking events, even taken on smaller residential jobs at a loss just to build her portfolio. And now Louis, who hadn't spoken to either of us in 3 years, suddenly wanted to hand her the opportunity she'd been desperately seeking. "Did he mention the anniversary?" I asked. Sophie's silence was answer enough. That night, I sat alone at Rosewood Bistro, explaining to Maria, our usual waitress, why the table for 2 had become a table for 1. I ordered Sophie's favorite pasta dish anyway, thinking she might still show up. She'd instead I got texts throughout the evening. "Amazing turnout. Louis's story is so inspiring. Wouldn't believe the connections he's made. This could change everything for us. Don't wait up." Heading to the after party at Wellington Heights Country Club. Wellington Heights, the most exclusive country club in 3 counties, where membership costs more than most people's annual salary. Louis had been back in town for exactly 1 week. He was already hosting after parties there. I drove home to our modest colonial in Maplewood, past the houses where we'd walked our dog Rex every evening for 6 years. Past the playground where Sophie had pointed out which swings our future kids would use. Everything looked the same, but something fundamental had shifted. The next morning, Sophie came home at 7 a.m., still in her cocktail dress, carrying her heels, and wearing a man's suit jacket that definitely wasn't mine. "Whose jacket?" I asked from the kitchen table, where I'd been drinking coffee and reading the local business journal's front-page article about Louis Romano's meteoric rise from small-town dreamer to tech mogul. "Louis let me borrow it. Air conditioning was too strong at the club." She avoided my eyes, heading straight upstairs. I'm going to shower and then head to the office. I have 3 potential clients who want to meet today. 3 clients in one day. That's unusual. She paused at the bottom of the stairs. They're all friends of Louis. He recommended me. And there it was, the beginning of the end. Wrapped up in what looked like the beginning of Sophie's dream career, over the next 2 weeks, I watched my wife transform. She started wearing more expensive clothes, claiming they were investments in her professional image. She joined the same gym as Louis, hired a personal trainer, and began talking about scaling her business model and leveraging synergistic partnerships. She attended 3 more of Louis's events, each time coming home later and more energized. She landed 2 major commercial projects, luxury apartment complex and a high-end office building renovation, both connected to Louis's investor network. This is exactly what I've been working towards, she said one evening, showing me architectural plans spread across our dining room table. Louis says I have real potential to become the premier commercial designer in the region. I looked at the plans, impressive and detailed, knowing Sophie had the talent to execute them brilliantly. What does Louis get out of this? She looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean, he's been gone for years. Now he's back. Immediately starts throwing business your way, introducing you to all the right people. What's his angle? Sophie's face hardened. Maybe he's just being generous. Maybe he believes in supporting family. Family. Louis had never treated me like family, not even when we were kids. But now, suddenly, he was interested in Sophie's success. That night, lying in bed beside my wife, who now wore expensive pajamas and used some new skincare routine, I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt exactly. I was relieved because, for the first time in 6 years, Sophie's mask was slipping, and I was finally seeing who she really was underneath. All those dreams about our perfect future together, the woman lying next to me wasn't the same person who used to sketch house renovation ideas on napkins. She was someone who could abandon 6 years of marriage for the promise of professional advancement, and that revelation, strangely enough, felt like freedom. To understand why I felt relieved instead of devastated, you need to know the real story of Louis Romano and how I'd been covering for him my entire life. Louis is my older brother by 3 years. From the time we were kids in Brookhaven, everyone assumed he was destined for greatness. He was charming, ambitious, and had this magnetic way of making people believe in his vision of the future. Teachers loved him, parents praised him, girls lined up to date him. What they didn't see was what happened behind closed doors. Louis had always been brilliant at taking credit for other people's work. In high school, I wrote his English papers while he charmed his way through presentations. In college, I helped him code his computer science assignments while he networked at fraternity parties. When he started his first tech startup after graduation, I spent nights debugging his programs while he pitched investors during the day. "You're better at the technical stuff," he'd say whenever I questioned why my name wasn't on any of the patents or business documents. "I'm better at the people stuff. We make a great team." Our parents, Maria and Vincent Romano, owned Romano's hardware store on Main Street, the kind of family business that had been barely profitable for 30 years. They'd always assumed Louis would take over someday and transform it into something bigger. When Louis announced he was moving to Silicon Valley instead to disrupt the hardware industry through innovative technology solutions, they were proud, but confused. What they didn't know was that Louis's big breakthrough, the proprietary inventory management software that eventually became the foundation of his tech company, was something I developed during my spare time while working as a software engineer at Hartwell Systems. I'd created it originally to help our parents modernize their store's inventory tracking. It was supposed to be a family project, a way to bring Romano's hardware into the digital age. I spent months perfecting the algorithms, making it user-friendly, adding features that could scale to larger operations. Louis saw the potential immediately. "Liam, this could be huge. It's not just for mom and dad's store, but for hardware retailers everywhere." I was excited. Finally, a project we could work on together as equal partners. But when Louis flew out to California to pitch the concept to investors, suddenly it became his revolutionary software solution. The patents were filed in his name. The company was incorporated as Romano Tech Solutions, with Louis as founder and CEO. We'll get equity, he promised me over the phone. Once we get our Series A funding, I'll make sure you're properly compensated. The equity never materialized. The proper compensation never came. When I asked about it, Louis always had reasons why it wasn't the right time yet. Meanwhile, I continued working my regular job at Hartwell Systems, watching from afar as my software branded. As Retail Mind Pro became the backbone of Louis's growing success, every feature upgrade, every bug fix, every optimization that made the software more valuably, did that work remotely, leaving Louis when he said we were building something amazing together. Retail Mind Pro landed its first major client. When I solved a critical scalability issue that Louis's hired developers couldn't figure out, the second major client came after I redesigned the user interface to be more intuitive. The venture capital funding round that made Louis a millionaire. On paper, that happened because I developed a machine learning component that could predict inventory needs with 94% accuracy. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. For 5 years, I was the ghost in Louis's machine. He was the face of the company, the visionary CEO who gave TED Talks about revolutionizing retail through intelligent technology. I was the shadow developer who made sure his vision actually functioned. The breaking point should have come when Louis sold the company to Technova Industries for $47 million. I should have demanded my share, should have exposed the truth about who really built Retail Mind Pro instead. Louis called me the night before the sale was announced. "Liam, I know this might seem unfair," he said, his voice carefully modulated to sound both grateful and regretful. "But the acquisition team did extensive due diligence. They found out about your ... contributions. Could complicate everything, you understand, right? He offered me $50,000 as a consulting fee, less than 0.1% of the sale price for software that was essentially my life's work. I should have been furious. I should have lawyered up, demanded recognition, fought for what was rightfully mine, but I didn't. I took the check and watched my brother become the toast of Silicon Valley. Why? Because by then, I understood something crucial about Louis. He was a parasite who survived by attaching himself to other people's talents and ambitions. Fighting him would have meant entering his world, playing by his rules. Becoming the kind of person who battles over credit and money, I preferred to stay. In Brookhaven, doing honest work at Hartwell Systems, building a quiet life with Sophie in our small colonial house, I thought I'd found peace. What I didn't realize was that Louis wasn't done with me yet. And Sophie, my wife, who claimed to love our simple, authentic life together, had been waiting all along for someone to offer her a bigger stage. The signs had been there for years, if I'd been willing to see them. Sophie's frustration when my projects at Hartwell Systems didn't lead to promotions, her comments about other couples who seemed to be advancing faster in their careers, her increasing interest in luxury lifestyle magazines and social media influencers who showcased expensive homes and exotic vacations. She'd married me thinking I was like Louis, ambitious, destined for wealth and success, and I chose contentment. Over-ambition chose integrity over advancement. She'd been disappointed but hopeful that I might eventually change. Louis's return shattered that hope. Here was proof that the Romano family was capable of extraordinary success. Louis had made it big, had achieved everything Sophie had secretly wanted from our marriage, and if Louis could offer her the lifestyle she'd always craved, why settle for the modest life I'd chosen? The truly painful part wasn't that Sophie was attracted to Louis's wealth. It was realizing that she'd never understood why I'd walked away from it in the first place. The moment I knew my marriage was over happened on a Tuesday morning in our kitchen. Over coffee and the newspaper Louis had started contributing to as a weekly business. Columnist Sophie was reading his latest article, Innovation in the Digital Age: How Small-Town Values Drive Big City Success, when she looked up at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Disappointment mixed with accusation. "Did you know Louis offered you a position at Romano Tech Solutions 3 years ago?" she asked, folding the newspaper so his photo was prominently displayed. Nearly choked on my coffee. He what? It's right here in the article. Talks about wanting to bring his talented family members into the company. But they chose stability over opportunity. She read directly from the text. I reached out to my brother, hoping to share the journey with someone I trusted. But he preferred the security of traditional employment. The lie was so breathtaking, so perfectly crafted that I almost admired it. Louis had turned my refusal to be exploited into his magnanimous offer that I'd selfishly rejected. Sophie, that's not what happened. She stared at me. So he did offer you a job? It's complicated. Complicated how? Either he offered you an opportunity to be part of something amazing, or he didn't. I could see the trap forming around me. If I told her the truth that I'd built the software that made Louis rich, she'd either think I was lying out of jealousy, or she'd be furious that I'd kept such a massive secret from her. If I said nothing, she'd believe Louis's version, that I was the cautious brother who'd chosen small-town mediocrity over big city success. What exactly do you want me to say here? I asked. I want you to explain why you never told me that your brother offered you a chance to be part of a multi-million-dollar company. I want to understand why you chose to stay at Hartwell Systems instead of building something extraordinary with your family. The word extraordinary hit like a physical blow. After 6 years of marriage, Sophie still saw our life as ordinary, our happiness as insufficient, our love as something that needed to be upgraded. Maybe I liked our life the way it was, I said quietly. Sophie stood up abruptly, the newspaper sliding to the floor. Our life, Liam? Look around. We're 32 years old, and we're living like we're retired. Same house, same jobs, same routines. Meanwhile, Louis is out there, actually making a difference. Making a difference how? He's creating opportunities. He's building something that matters. She gestured helplessly, then grabbed her purse from the counter. I'm meeting him for lunch today. He wants to discuss a potential partnership for my design business. Another lunch meeting. It's a business meeting, Liam, right? Like the other 4 business meetings you've had with him this month? Sophie turned to face me fully, and I saw something final in her expression. Maybe if you'd taken his offer 3 years ago, you'd understand what it means to have real opportunities instead of being suspicious of them. She left without kissing me goodbye, something we hadn't missed doing in 6 years of marriage. That afternoon, while Sophie was at her business lunch, I did something I'd never done before. I researched my brother's new venture capital firm, Romano Equity Partners. What I found was fascinating. In just 6 weeks since returning to Brookhaven, Louis had established himself as a major player in regional development. He was funding 3 luxury real estate projects, had partnerships with 2 major construction companies, and was reportedly considering several tech startups for investment. The press coverage painted him as a visionary who was bringing Silicon Valley expertise to revitalize small-town economies. Local politicians praised his commitment to community development. Business leaders called him an inspiration. But as I dug deeper, patterns emerged that felt disturbingly familiar. Every project, Louis's funding had originated from local entrepreneurs, people who developed the concepts, done the research, identified the opportunities. Louis's role was consistently described as providing capital and strategic guidance. But the more I read, the more it sounded like he was doing what he'd always done, taking credit for other people's ideas while contributing money and connections. The luxury apartment complex Sophie was designing, originally conceived by Amanda Walsh, a local architect who'd been trying to get funding for 2 years before Louis appeared. The tech startup he was reportedly mentoring, founded by Jason Kim, a recent graduate whose machine learning algorithm Louis was now calling exactly the kind of innovation we look for. I recognized the pattern because I'd lived it. Louis wasn't creating opportunities, he was appropriating them and positioning himself as the generous benefactor who made them possible. The final piece clicked into place. When Sophie came home that evening, radiant with excitement and wearing a new watch I'd never seen before, Louis offered me a full partnership, she announced, showing me architectural plans for what looked like a massive commercial development. Romano Equity Partners wants me to be their exclusive interior design consultant. It's a 5-year contract, worth more than I've made in my entire career. I looked at the plans, recognizing the scope and ambition. Where did this project come from? Louis identified the opportunity. He says Brookhaven is perfect for this kind of mixed-use development, retail, office space, luxury condos. It's exactly what the town needs to attract young professionals. You'd be working directly with him? Sophie's cheeks flushed. We'd be working together, yes, partners in every sense. The phrase hung in the air between us, loaded with implications neither of us wanted to address directly. That night, after Sophie had gone to bed, still clutching the development plans, I made my decision. I wasn't going to fight for my marriage. I wasn't going to compete with Louis for Sophie's attention or affection. I wasn't going to try to convince her that our quiet life together had value. Instead, I was going to do something I should have done years ago. I was going to expose exactly who Louis Romano really was. Not out of revenge, though I won't lie and say revenge wasn't part of it, but because Sophie deserved to know the truth about the man she was about to build her future with. And because every entrepreneur whose ideas Louis was appropriating deserved to know what they were really getting into. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Every email, every file, every piece of code I'd ever written for Louis, every patent that should have had my name on it, every innovation that had made Romano Tech Solutions valuable. By morning, I had a portfolio that would destroy my brother's reputation and everything he'd built with it. The question wasn't whether I was going to use it. The question was how much collateral damage I was willing to accept when I did, starting with my marriage to Sophie, which was already over whether she realized it yet or not. The first person I contacted was Amanda Walsh, the architect whose apartment complex project Louis had somehow claimed as his own vision. I found her contact information through the Brookhaven Chamber of Commerce directory and called her on a Saturday morning, expecting to leave a voicemail. She answered on the second ring. Amanda Walsh speaking. Hi, this is Liam Tanaka. I'm Louis Romano's brother. I was wondering if we could meet to discuss your Riverside Commons project. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, what project? The luxury apartment complex. The one that Romano Equity Partners is funding? Another pause, longer this time. Mr. Tanaka, I think there's been some confusion. The project isn't called Riverside Commons, and I designed it 2 years ago under the name Harmony Heights. They've been trying to get funding ever since. My stomach dropped. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I think we need to talk. An hour later, I sat across from Amanda at Millbrook Cafe, watching her spread out original blueprints that were nearly identical to the plans Sophie had shown me, except these were dated 18 months earlier and bore Amanda's architectural firm logo. I pitched this to every investor in the region, Amanda explained, her voice tight with frustration. Everyone said it was too ambitious for Brookhaven, that there wasn't enough demand for luxury housing. Then Louis Romano shows up, calls it his vision for revitalizing the downtown area, and suddenly banks are lining up to fund it. What about your contract? Your rights to the design? Amanda laughed bitterly. That's the brilliant part. He never stole my plans outright. He hired me as a consulting architect to refine his concept. Legally, any modifications I make become his intellectual property. I get paid a consulting fee, but he gets credit as the project originator. It was the same pattern I'd lived through, refined and perfected. Louis had learned that outright theft was risky, but manipulation, positioned as generous collaboration, was bulletproof. There are others, Amanda continued. Jason Kim, the guy with the machine learning startup. Louis is calling himself a co-founder now, but Jason did all the original research. Maria Santos had the idea for the organic food distribution network that Louis is now launching through his equity firm. I spent the rest of the weekend tracking down Jason and Maria. Their stories were identical in structure, different only in detail. Each had approached local investors with innovative ideas. Each had been rejected or ignored. Each had been approached by Louis after his return, offered partnerships that sounded generous, but gradually transferred ownership and credit to Romano Equity Partners. The genius of it, Jason explained over drinks at O'Malley's pub, is that he makes you grateful. You're so desperate for someone to believe in your project that you don't notice how the terms keep shifting. By the time you realize what's happening, he controls everything that matters." Maria nodded grimly. "And if you complain, you look like an ungrateful partner who's biting the hand that feeds you. He's very careful to make sure there are witnesses to his generosity. By Monday morning, I had something I'd never expected to find. Allies. People who understood exactly what Louis was capable of because they'd experienced it firsthand. More importantly, I had people with detailed documentation of how their ideas had been appropriated. That afternoon, I received a text from Sophie. "Won't be home for dinner. Strategic planning session with Louis. This partnership is going to change everything for us." The irony was perfect. While Sophie was planning her future with my brother, I was planning his downfall with the people he'd been exploiting. I called Dr. Patricia Chen, a lawyer I'd known since college who specialized in intellectual property cases. She listened to our situation with growing interest. "What you're describing isn't necessarily illegal," she said carefully, "but it's definitely unethical. And if we can prove a pattern of misrepresentation to investors, there might be grounds for fraud charges." "What would we need to prove that?" "Documentation. Evidence that he's claiming credit for work he didn't do, proof that he's misrepresenting his role to secure funding." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I think we can manage that." The next evening, while Sophie attended another Romano Equity Partners event at Wellington Heights Country Club, Amanda, Jason, Maria, and I met in my living room to coordinate our strategy. We weren't just gathering evidence anymore. We were planning a coordinated revelation that would expose Louis's entire operation. The key, Patricia had advised, is timing. We want maximum impact with minimum legal risk. We decided on the Brookhaven Business Excellence Award ceremony scheduled for the following month. Louis was being honored as Entrepreneur of the Year for his innovative contributions to regional economic development. It seemed like the perfect venue to show everyone exactly what kind of innovation Louis Romano was really known for. As I watched my co-conspirators leave that night, felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the thrill of taking action instead of accepting injustice. For too long, I'd been Louis's silent enabler, choosing peace over confrontation. But some things were worth fighting for, and sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to expose them to their prey. The Brookhaven Business Excellence Awards ceremony was held at the Grand Ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel, the most prestigious venue in town. Sophie had bought a new evening gown for the occasion, black silk with a plunging neckline that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. "You look beautiful," I told her as we got ready together for what I knew would be our last event as a married couple. She smiled, but it was distracted, nervous. "Louis asked me to sit at the head table with him," says his business partner. "Of course he did." She studied my reflection in the mirror. "You've been different lately, distant." Liam, I know this transition has been hard for you. Seeing Louis succeed while you're still at the same job, same salary, ... She turned to face me directly. "But tonight could change everything for us." Louis hinted that there might be opportunities for you too, once my partnership is established. Adjusted my tie, marveling at how completely Sophie misunderstood the situation. Even now, she believed Louis was our salvation rather than our destruction. "We'll see what tonight brings," I said. The ballroom was packed with Brookhaven's business elite, local politicians, and regional media. Louis held court near the bar, surrounded by admirers listening to his stories about Silicon Valley's success and small-town values. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo and the confident smile of a man who believed his own mythology. Sophie joined his circle immediately, slipping her arm through his as naturally as if they'd been together for years instead of weeks. Watching them, I felt the last vestiges of sadness about my marriage dissolve into something harder and more useful. Determination, Amanda. Jason and Maria had positioned themselves strategically throughout the ballroom. Patricia Chen sat at a table near the stage, her laptop ready. We'd rehearsed this moment, but now that it was here, my heart hammered against my ribs. The ceremony proceeded through the usual awards: Retailer of the Year, Community Service, Excellence, Innovation in Manufacturing. Finally, Chamber of Commerce President Harold Morrison took the podium for the evening's main event. "Our Entrepreneur of the Year has shown us what's possible when vision meets execution," Morrison announced. In just 2 months since returning to Brookhaven, Louis Romano has launched multiple ventures that promise to transform our local economy. Please welcome this year's honoree. The applause was thunderous. Louis rose from the head table, pausing to kiss Sophie's cheek before walking to the stage with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to standing ovations. "Thank you," he began, his voice carrying easily through the ballroom. "When I left Brookhaven 5 years ago, I promised myself I'd return someday to give back to the community that shaped me. Tonight represents the fulfillment of that promise. He launched into his practiced speech about innovation, opportunity, and the importance of recognizing untapped potential in small-town markets. The audience hung on every word, but I was watching faces, waiting for the perfect moment. It came. When Louis said, "Success isn't about individual achievement. It's about building platforms that elevate everyone around you." I stood up. "It's interesting, Louis. Tell us more about building platforms." The ballroom fell silent. Louis' smile flickered, but held. "Liam, is there something you'd like to add?" "Actually, yes." I walked toward the stage, pulling out my phone. "I like to talk about Retail Mind Pro." Louis' face went pale, but he recovered quickly. "My software company." "Sure. Though tonight's really about my current ventures." "Your software company," I repeated, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The one built on inventory management algorithms that I developed in my spare time to help our parents' hardware store." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sophie's face was a mask of confusion and dawning horror. "Liam, I think there's been some misunderstanding," Louis said carefully. "No misunderstanding." I held up my phone, where Patricia had uploaded years of documentation. I have every email, every file, every piece of code. 5 years of you taking credit for my work. It's culminating in a $47 million sale where I received $50,000 as a consulting fee. The murmur became a buzz. Morrison looked frantically between Louis and me, unsure how to handle this unprecedented disruption, but I wasn't finished. "Amanda Walsh," I called out. She stood up, holding her original blueprints. "Would you like to tell everyone about Harmony Heights? The apartment complex you designed 2 years ago that Louis is now calling his vision?" Jason Kim rose next, laptop in hand. "And I can explain how my machine learning research became Louis' innovative startup concept." Maria Santos stood as, well, or we could discuss whose idea the organic food distribution network really was. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Louis gripped the podium, his face cycling through emotion, shock, anger, calculation, desperation. "This is clearly a coordinated attack," he said into the microphone, but his voice had lost its authority. "Disgruntled former employees making wild accusations? ... double quotes. Former employees?" I laughed, walking closer to the stage. "Louis, I'm your brother. Amanda, Jason, and Maria are the entrepreneurs whose ideas you've been stealing since you got back to town. And Patricia Chen is the intellectual property lawyer who's been documenting everything." The room fell completely silent. In that silence, Sophie's voice cut through like a blade. "Liam." She was standing now, her face white with shock. "Is this true?" I met her eyes across the ballroom. Every word. She looked at Louis, still frozen at the podium, then back at me. For the first time in months, saw my wife nod. The ambitious woman who'd been seduced by promises of wealth, but the Sophie who'd once believed in justice and truth. "The partnership," she whispered. "The contracts. Everything we planned. ... built. On stolen ideas and other people's work," I said gently, "just like it always has been." Louis made one last desperate attempt to regain control. "Even if there's some truth to these allegations, what I've accomplished speaks for itself." "What you've accomplished," Patricia Chen interrupted, standing, with her laptop open, "is fraud. And thanks to Mr. Tanaka's documentation, we have enough evidence to prove it." That's when Louis finally broke. The mask of confident success cracked completely, revealing the desperate, grasping man underneath. "You have no idea what you've just done," he snarled at me, abandoning the microphone. You think you're the hero here? You're pathetic. You've always been pathetic. That's why Sophie came to me, because she finally realized what a loser she married. The words should have hurt. 6 months ago, they would have destroyed me. Instead, I smiled. You're right, Louis. Sophie did come to you, and that told me everything. I needed to know about both of you. The fallout from the Brookhaven Business Excellence Awards ceremony was swift and merciless. By Monday morning, Romano Equity Partners investors had frozen all funding pending a full investigation. The Brookhaven Tribune ran a front-page expose titled Local Success Story, built on stolen ideas. Complete with side-by-side comparisons of Louis's innovations and the original work by Amanda, Jason, and Maria, Patricia Chen's law firm filed fraud charges on behalf of all the affected entrepreneurs. The district attorney's office, eager to make an example of high-profile financial crimes, announced they were launching their own investigation into Romano Equity Partners' business practices, but the most satisfying consequence was watching Louis's carefully constructed image crumble in real time. The TED Talk invitation was rescinded. The Silicon Valley networking group expelled him for misrepresenting his professional background. Most devastating of all, Technova Industries, the company that had bought Retail Mind, demanded a meeting to clarify the ownership structure of the acquired intellectual property. I attended that meeting with Patricia Chen and a thick folder of documentation proving my role in developing the software. By the end of the afternoon, I walked out with a settlement check for $12 million, my rightful share of the original sale, plus interest and damages. Louis, meanwhile, walked out facing potential criminal charges and a civil lawsuit that would likely consume whatever money he had left. Sophie returned to our house in Maplewood 3 days after the ceremony. But she didn't come to reconcile, she came to pack. Need you to know, she said, folding her expensive clothes into suitcases, I never intended for things to go this far. I sat on our bed, watching her dismantle 6 years of shared life. How far did you intend them to go? She paused, holding the black silk dress she'd worn to the award ceremony. I thought, I hoped you'd fight for me. That seeing me with Louis would wake you up, make you realize what you were throwing away by staying in this small life. Oh, this was all a test. Not a test, a wake-up call. She looked around our bedroom, the comfortable furniture we'd picked out together, the photos of our modest but happy life, the books we'd read to each other on Sunday mornings. But I guess we just wanted different things. She wasn't wrong. Sophie had wanted ambition, wealth, status, all the things Louis had promised to deliver. I had wanted integrity, authenticity, and a partner who valued those things more than material success. Where will you go? I asked. My sister's place in Portland. Now I need time to figure out what comes next. She zipped up the last suitcase. The design contracts with Louis's company are obviously void now. I'll have to start over. There was a time when that would have broken my heart, seeing Sophie lose everything she'd worked for because of choices that seemed so obviously wrong in hindsight. But now I felt only a distant sadness, like watching a movie about people I used to know. You could stay, I offered. You could try to work through this. Sophie smiled sadly. No, Liam, we couldn't, because you'll always know that when it mattered most. I chose money over marriage. I'll always know that you're capable of destroying someone completely when you decide they deserve it. She wasn't wrong about that either. 6 months later, I moved out of our house in Maplewood, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. With my settlement money, I bought a beautiful craftsman home in the historic district of Brookhaven, walking distance from the new company I'd founded with Amanda, Jason, and Maria. We called it Collective Innovation, a consulting firm that helped small-town entrepreneurs develop and protect their ideas before taking them to market. Our first clients included 3 of Louis's former partners who wanted to reclaim their stolen concepts. Amanda Walsh got her apartment complex built, with her name prominently displayed as the architect. Jason Kim's machine learning startup secured legitimate funding and was already showing impressive growth. Maria Santos launched her organic food distribution network, which now supplied restaurants throughout the region. As for Louis, he avoided prison, but lost everything else. The last I heard, he was working as a sales representative for a software company in Cleveland, living in a studio apartment, and making a fraction of what he'd once claimed as his own success. Our parents, Maria and Vincent Romano, finally learned the truth about their golden son and their underestimated younger child. They sold Romano's hardware store and moved to a retirement community in Arizona, but not before calling to apologize for decades of favoritism and neglect. "We always thought Louis was the special one," my mother said during that difficult conversation. "We never saw what was right in front of us." I forgave them. Because carrying anger takes energy I preferred to spend on building something positive. The most unexpected development came 8 months after the award ceremony, when I received a text from an unknown number, saw the article. "About your company in Forbes? Congratulations, you were right about everything." I deleted the message without responding. Sophie belonged to my past now, a chapter I'd closed when I chose truth over comfortable lies. These days, I wake up in my craftsman home, walk to work at a company I'm proud of, and spend evenings with people who respect integrity more than ambition. It's a simple life, but it's genuinely mine built on my own work, my own choices, my own values. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's building something so authentic and meaningful that their hollow victories become irrelevant by comparison. I'd finally learned the difference between success and significance. And for the first time in my life, I had both. 3 years later, I was reviewing quarterly reports for Collective Innovation when Amanda knocked on my office door. Practically glowing with excitement. "You need to see this," she said, handing me a copy of Architectural Digest. Her Harmony Heights apartment complex graced the cover with the headline, "Small Town Vision, World-Class Design." "Amanda, this is incredible," I said, flipping through the feature article that praised her innovative approach to affordable luxury housing. "The best part?" She grinned. "They want to feature our entire business model in next month's issue. How we're proving that ethical entrepreneurship isn't just possible, it's more profitable in the long run." Collective Innovation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We now had offices in 3 states, had helped launch over 50 successful startups, and had developed a reputation as the go-to firm for entrepreneurs who wanted to build something meaningful. Jason Kim's machine learning company had been acquired by Google for $200 million with proper contracts ensuring he retained credit and control. Maria Santos had expanded her organic distribution network into a regional powerhouse that was revolutionizing farm-table supply chains. That evening, I drove home to find Dr. Alina Rodriguez, my girlfriend of 18 months, cooking dinner. In our kitchen, she was a literature professor at Brookhaven University, brilliant, kind, and completely unimpressed by wealth or status. She loved me for who I was, not what I could provide. "How was your day, entrepreneur?" she teased, kissing me hello. "Perfect," I said, meaning it completely. Later, as we sat on our front porch watching the sunset, Alina showed me a news article on her phone. Louis Romano had been arrested again, this time for attempting to plagiarize academic research for a startup pitch in Ohio. "Do you ever feel sorry for him?" she asked. I considered the question seriously. I feel sorry for who he could have been if he'd chosen differently. But I can't feel sorry for who he became. 3 years ago, I thought my life was falling apart. My wife was leaving me, my brother was stealing from me, and I felt powerless to change any of it. Now, I understood that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are. Sophie and Louis had freed me from illusions I didn't even know I was carrying. Some people spend their whole lives searching for happiness and other people's approval, other people's success, other people's definitions of worth. I'd found mine by finally learning to trust my own. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.